Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us for today's live session in the Channel Expert Hour. We are joined by friends and experts from eFolder, and we will be discussing a bake-off and real-world experiences between multiple BDR solutions. So we appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us for today's conversation. Hopefully these kinds of experiences will resonate with you and give you some very tactical pointers on how to begin to proceed as you look for solutions for your customer and for your business practice. My name is Ryan Morris. I am working as a principal consultant with my own practice, but also as a special advisor with Tenzin Technology, focused on business-related solutions for the IT channel. We're going to be bringing you this conversation today in the On24 platform. If you're not familiar with the way that this system works, just a very quick overview of a few of the interactive features so that you can get the most out of today's session as possible. First off, you'll notice across the bottom of the interface the widget bar, a number of places where you can click. Please pay particular attention to the red button for Q&A. We invite you to submit your questions as we go through today's conversation. We've reserved time at the end of the call where we will answer as many of those as possible, but please feel free to begin submitting them at any point during the conversation so that we can cover all of the topics and make sure that we get you guys the answers that you need. You'll also notice there on the bottom a button for the Twitter feed. This will actually allow you to tweet from within the format of the On24 platform so that you can share information with your community and those that you have social media conversations with. We definitely want to get those kinds of things going and help us share the information you learned today with the rest of your community. You'll also notice that the window that you are seeing the slides in, it can be moved around and resized to match your monitor to give you the best possible viewing experience. So if it's too small or it's not positioned correctly, please feel free to take care of that on the interface by yourself. Quick overview then of what we will be covering in today's session. We're going to be talking about disaster recovery and business continuity solutions for small to medium-sized businesses. Obviously, this is a topic that you should be familiar with in its general sense, but we want to dig down into understanding not just the vision and solutions that eFolder brings to the table for these BDR solutions, but also a panel discussion with partners who have experienced this technology in real-world scenarios and have found ways to solve very important customer challenges using this kind of technology. So we want to do this in multiple environments so that we're kind of showing you the flexibility that the tools have for fitting into your environment as well as solving your customers' problems. So this panel discussion is going to be the centerpiece of today's session. In order to get us going through this conversation, let me bring in the moderator for the panel conversation, Ted Hulsy. He is the Vice President of Marketing for eFolder. Ted, welcome to the call.
It's great to be here, Ryan. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And if you wouldn't mind, if you can introduce for those that are dialed in the panelists who will be participating in the conversation.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ryan. Let me introduce our three eFolder partners. We're really lucky today to really be able to have an interactive conversation with real MSPs who are out there doing this every day. Let me start on the left here. John Bolter is a seasoned digital executive. John is currently the Chief Operations Officer at Seamless Solutions in Houston, Texas. 15 years as a manager, has honed his management style to a razor's edge. John recently spoke at the iText show in 2015 about true customer care through automation to reduce costs while improving revenue. John, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. And next is Nitesh Mistry. He is the founder of Support 305. Nitesh founded Support 305 in 2002, and to this day, he has not lost a single client. Nitesh graduated with a degree in computer science from Florida International University. Nitesh, welcome.
Thank you.
And then last but not least is Farrell Lusher. Farrell has been working in IT for over 20 years, and in 2011 formed his own IT consulting firm, Stepfar Technology Group to focus on managed services for the small and mid-sized market. Farrell has been an early believer in the benefits of managed services to clients and strives to continually improve on their service offering for their clientele. Farrell, welcome to today's webinar.
Good to be here.
Okay. So, Ryan, why don't I just quickly hand the ball back to you to kind of give some additional context on the business continuity market.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ted, and welcome to all of our panelists. As I indicated when we got started here with today's conversation, BDR should not be a new conversation for an MSP, right? This is something that lives at the heart of the services that we provide to our customers, and it is recognized across the industry as one of the most common, one of the most popular solutions and services that you provide to your customers. That's not an accident because data is vital and customers are naturally concerned, and probably even more so now than they have been in the past, with the ability to protect and preserve those digital assets. But what we find from a research point of view is that for as long as we've been talking about it, for as popular as this service is, there is still a gaping hole in the industry of customers who just don't have a legitimate solution in place. In fact, according to IDC's research, 35% of SMBs have no continuity plan at all, and of those that do, obviously, there are some that have very robust plans and some that are less robust, but fully a third of the marketplace doesn't have any plan at all, just kind of crossing fingers and hoping things work out in the best way. As we look at the implications of data loss in a disaster-type scenario, we can find from a number of different analyst and research organizations statistics that speak to the permanency of those consequences, right? According to the Institute for Business and Home Safety, their data tells us that 25% of those SMB customers that we deal with, if they experience a disaster, they just aren't able to get back up and running. Occasionally that's going to be because of physical factors, but in a shocking number of cases, it's simply because they've lost their information and they don't have the ability to begin again where they were before. Now, we've also, for a long time, been trying to put numbers to this, right? In the spirit of the return on investment of an insurance policy in backup and disaster recovery, it depends on what kind of business they run. But we found that these numbers kind of make it very compelling for even the smallest of our customers. This resource from Small Business Majority indicates that the median cost of a day of downtime is $3,000. And I doubt you're charging anywhere near that much for these services. So it is something as an insurance policy that we hope doesn't need to pay off, but unfortunately we see way too many of these cases where it does need to be paid off. We hope that that puts you in a position to provide real value for your customers and actually prevent downtime that leads to very serious consequences down the road. I'm excited to hear some of the real-world experiences that we have teed up today, but let me first turn it back to Ted. And Ted, if you wouldn't mind kind of walking us through your position on how you approach, from the eFolder point of view, this opportunity of BDR, and then we'll dive into the conversation.
Okay, well, great. Thanks, Ryan. I think before talking about, kind of eFolder's strategy in this arena, let me just make another comment just on the overall market. I mean, I think, a key thing that you as an MSP need to do is having that cost of downtime conversation with your clients. Because if BDR properly done it should be a premium service you offer to your clients. It should be a pillar of an overall bundled managed service strategy. And really, you should be charging top dollar for that because you're guaranteeing to your clients that they're going to have high degrees of uptime, whether they face an everyday disaster or a massive disaster. And so the critical thing you need to be able to do is have a very intelligent conversation around the cost of downtime. eFolder, we just released our new business continuity partner playbook, and in that playbook we have a cost of downtime calculator, which I recommend everybody track down and use. because it's a tool to basically just ask the client a couple questions around, how much revenue do they generate, how many employees do they have, what does lost productivity or lost revenue generation cost in a business, which are the two of the most common results of an outage of some kind, is lost productivity and lost revenue generation. And it's very easy, as Ryan just showed on that prior slide, that the median cost for a typical business is $3,000 a day, at least. And in many, many businesses, if they have $5, $10, $20 million a year in revenue, the cost of a full day of downtime is far in excess of $3,000. And so it really becomes a lot easier to have a premium-based conversation with the client when the client really understands what downtime is going to cost them when and if it strikes. But if we look at the slide right there in front of us, it kind of tees up the conversation we're going to have today, which is eFolder's strategy in the BDR market is very cloud-centric. We've been operating a petabyte storage cloud for over a decade, and what we bring to IT channel partners is the compute, storage, and recovery cloud environment that is needed to deliver an end-to-end business continuity solution. Many of you on the call today probably have been working with vendors like Acronis or StorageCraft, or Aperture for years. And in many deployment scenarios, a lot of image-based backup software was deployed as really a labor-saving device. You wanted to capture a full image of the server first and foremost, because if you lost that piece of equipment in some way, if there was a massive software corruption, you wanted to have fast recovery, and you didn't want to invest all the man hours to get that server back properly configured. But really, the need for clients has gone from, hey, it's not just about protecting the data, it's not just about protecting the system, it's about taking those systems, backing them up to the cloud, and making sure that we can run them in the cloud if any kind of disaster strikes. That's what we mean by true business continuity. And so what we do is we allow you to use the flavor of image-based backup software you like, that your technicians are already trained on, and then we connect it to our cloud environment, which then allows MSPs to go out there and deliver an end-to-end business continuity solution. So that's really what's unique about eFolder's strategy. We're really the only player in the market that exploits this strategy in this way, where you have 5 different software flavors to choose from that are married to our cloud environment and have unique recovery requirements in the eFolder cloud. And what we're going to be doing today is really kind of a bake-off or just a compare and contrast conversation with 3 different eFolder partners. So John on the left uses eFolder BDR for ShadowProtect, which is the software from StorageCraft. Nitesh uses Acronis, and Farrell is using one of eFolder's newest product lines, which is eFolder BDR for Replibit. And so we're going to compare and contrast each kind of solution and help you understand what are some of the unique capabilities of each, and what are the capabilities that are common to all of eFolder's BDR product lines. So with that, let's start out with John. John, why don't you tell us a little bit about your company and how you came to found it and that sort of thing.
Sure, absolutely. So Seamless Solutions started out, believe it or not, back in 1984 we started as a fax company selling fax machines when everybody thought faxing was kind of magic. And over the years, we developed into more print solutions, and then as copiers became MFPs, we jumped into the IT field. As time passed on, we started to move more and more into managed network services for our customers because we understood that monthly billing cycle and leasing very well. So it became a natural progression for us to move into that way. We are located in Houston, Texas, greatest state in the world. Sorry if those of you that don't live here. We do focus on the oil and gas, legal, and trucking are some of our major verticals that we actually do very well with our managed network services offering.
So John, can you tell me a little bit, when did you make the transition from being kind of a copier partner to a full suite of managed services? What year did that transition take place?
Well, we started to make the transition into IT in about 2002, and we were just doing break-fix type of services. And then 2011, I would say, was when we really started to look at managed network services as a true offering that we wanted to offer all-you-could-eat packages to our customers and stop offering just hourly billables.
Okay, and what would you say was the kind of the biggest part, the most difficult part of the transition?
Educating our sales staff, I think, was probably the hardest part about it. Customers actually seemed pretty open to the idea. They were pretty excited about not having to worry about every time they called. They wanted somebody to take over, and so they could focus on their main business. So the difficulty was more for us internally as opposed to externally, getting systems and processes in place to make that transition. Okay.
Well, great. Let's change gears and talk a little bit about how business continuity and BDR fits into your service offering. So tell us a little bit about your journey and your path to find eFolder and start using our BDR for ShadowProtect service offering.
Sure. Like most IT people, especially just doing billable break-fix type work, we had I would say a slew of offerings that were out there that we had sold to different customers over time, mostly upgrading their older systems, Symantec backup, Windows backup on a few, and then, as cloud and backups and, file-based backups became more popular, we started using things like MySecure Backup from Rackspace or Mozy. And then, of course, imaging, we were using things like Norton Ghost. And all of those together created such a havoc to have to know and manage and maintain. And then when we tried to restore, most of them were unsuccessful at best, I think you could say, or they were successful, but they were very time-consuming and very expensive to the end customer. So we started to look at an image-based backup system, and of course we compared a few of them, Aperture and Acronis being a few, but we settled on the ShadowProtect really in depth because we liked the ease of it, we liked how quickly it could restore, and that was a big point for us, that we could change restoration points, that we could mount drives without having to do full restores, and it became a major player for us. The issue with it was when we started to go out and sell Shadowcraft, we really didn't know what we were doing, and so we just did whatever we thought was right, which we were actually replicating back to our own internal systems and things like that, which wasn't the best solution. So then we started looking for a cloud partner, and eFolder came around and said, hey, here's a solution where you can not only have your licenses for Shadowcraft, but you can also have our great off-site cloud storage. And so it just became a great partnership. The cost was so much less than going directly through ShadowProtect and using the eFolder solution.
And tell me when you initially were using ShadowProtect to replicate data back to your own environment, what were some of the challenges of that approach?
So bandwidth was a huge challenge. Size was another challenge. We would plan for, a customer to have, we had one customer that we had planned for having 6 terabytes, and they ended up with 13. That was an issue because we were backing up to little NAS devices, and though that sounds like an easy fix, just go buy another NAS, when you're talking about backups, they got to be in, similar locations and things like that. And so we were and they wanted, from inception to now, they wanted to keep every backup, so that was a real challenge for us to keep growing that space.
Right, so just overall data growth and then the complexity of managing yourself proved a pretty big hassle.
Yeah, we would suck down bandwidth internally for us to back up and pull things over, so it just definitely grew out of control for us to handle internally.
So, and what do your techs, what are some of the kind of the key capabilities that your techs like in the ShadowProtect solution? So,
my technicians love the ability to go into ShadowProtect and just mount a drive, go pull the file off for the customer, restore it back to a specific point or multiple points, and allow them to see the drives at different points. I know that we've had a legal office that they had a file clerk that actually deleted a folder, and that folder contained part of the evidence that they needed for a trial that the attorney was about to walk into in about an hour. He picked up the phone, called us. We were able to restore the entire thing within a matter of seconds, grab the files for him, throw them out there, allow him to print them at his remote location, and go in and actually accomplish the goals that he needed to accomplish that day without having to put a postponement, which would have cost, tens of thousands of dollars for the attorney.
Wow. Well, I think that's kind of the example that, in many cases, data loss or downtime or lost productivity is kind of user error, and it's kind of those everyday disasters which can really end up causing some major costs. And that's an example of really how you guys were the one throat to choke to really be the guys who saved their bacon in the context of a pretty rushed scenario.
Yeah, there was no time to, on previous solutions that we had done, if we had done tape or even copied it over to external hard drives, there was no chance of recovery in that amount of time. It just was never going to happen within that 5 to 10 minute window that we had.
And tell me a little bit about the different kinds of clients you're deploying eFolder BDR for ShadowProtect to.
So, oil and gas, Texas, we have quite a bit of that. We also have a lot of transportation in Texas, so we handle a lot of trucking companies and things like that. We back up their document management for a lot of trucking companies and things like that. Legal, I already spoke about legal being a big player for us. We really like the legal market because we're able to go in and talk to attorneys and explain to them. If anybody understands hourlies and the loss of productivity, I think an attorney can understand if they can't find something that got deleted because of their own mistakes sometimes, that they see a huge value in that. So recovery in the legal market is enormous for us. So that's a big one that we really push the backup disaster recovery and business continuity, and we say, look, let me explain to you how this works. What would it cost you if you had to reproduce this document? And sometimes they say, well, that would be the case, and that case is worth, $1 million too. Well, our solution is minuscule in that cost, so it's very easy to justify.
And how do you go about pricing and packaging your managed service offering today? How does business continuity fit? Is it a standalone offering, or is it part of an overall managed services bundle?
So we separate it out as it's a standalone offering, and we price it by the server. Now, we do some desktop recovery and things like that, but mostly we focus on servers, and we work on customers that work with us. Most of them, we back up all their local files to their server and don't store anything on the local machines if we at all can. And the nice thing about ShadowProtect that I like is that we use it both in a virtual environment and a physical environment, so we don't have to have two separate products. And the ShadowProtect product, with the eFolder pricing, has been phenomenal that we are able to go out and price it and make huge revenue off of it, because we actually price it as a one number per server, and that not only accounts for your license, it accounts for, we actually price it with 1 terabyte of backed up storage, and then we include in there all the services necessary to not only back up your software, but check your backups on a monthly or quarterly basis, and then also we include recovery. So if a disaster ever happens, you don't have to worry about a secondary bill, and a lot of our customers don't mind paying a little extra every month to know that when a disaster happens, they don't have to worry about getting this huge, $6,000, $4,000 bill to restore a server. Instead, it's all included in that one price.
Great. And then what's a typical client deployment look like? How many servers are you usually protecting for a typical client?
It ranges. We do really focus on the small to medium-sized businesses, so our typical clients are really, 2 to 3 servers, and those are priced anywhere from $400 to $700 a month for that backup disaster recovery, and for that they also get included an on-site BDR so that we can do fast recoveries on those. So that's kind of our
great.
Scale.
Okay, that's great. That's a great picture of success, I think. And tell me, one of the choices you have in working with eFolder is to either source your BDR appliances from us or build your own. What do you happen to be doing there in that area?
We've been building our own. It's just kind of what we've always done is just built our own. We have enough manufacturers that we can reach out to and get their equipment at a decent price that we've just always built our own. But we are definitely looking at the appliances from eFolder to see if it makes sense for us just to allow you guys to build them for us and keep it in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is we just give partners a choice in that area. So I guess before we transition, I'd ask kind of one last question. I mean, I think we still are, there's still lots of partners out there that are making the transition to managed services and usually are, kind of sitting on a lot of variety in their client base in terms of solutions. What piece of advice would you give them in terms of, dealing with, all of that variety and the benefits of standardization across your client base?
Well, I think that if you don't standardize, there's very little chance that you're ever going to be able to be that expert for a customer. Nobody can be an expert on 400 different pieces of software, right? You have to be an expert on what you can work on. And so since our business continuity is ShadowProtect, we know it. My guys are trained on ShadowProtect. They go to ShadowProtect conferences. They spend time reading about ShadowProtect. They know everything that's going on about it. When we had 15 different solutions, we were, Joe Schmo who could Google the answer. But we now are the guys that, we could actually answer the Google questions ourselves instead of having to go out and ask it to Google. So it changes the dynamic for you. As an IT professional, I think it's always better to go in and be an expert on something than it is to be a generalist on everything.
Okay. Well, that's great. That's great advice. Okay. Well, stay tuned for questions. I'm sure there's a bunch that are going to come in. Great feedback, John. Thank you. Let's go to the next point of view on the topic. Nitesh, why don't you tell us about Support 305?
Support 305 is a company based out of Miami, and we started out basically, we got one contract many years ago, and then we turned that into a full-fledged IT company. We meaning I, but I mean I have a whole team now. But yeah, we're the same. We started out doing a lot of break-fix type of stuff. Then we moved into managed services, and now we're a combination of managed services and break-fix. But we try to do the same thing. We try to build a package for our clients that encompasses everything at a fixed fee, so they don't have to worry about anything in terms of servers, backups, restores, or anything like that. And that's basically what we do.
Okay. And do you have a strategy around migrating completely from break-fix, or do you feel there's a way to kind of balance that in the business to serve a larger client base?
We have tried to move as many clients as we can to managed services. We've done pretty successful with the larger type of clients. Medium-sized clients they just depend on how they see the cost. Smaller clients don't see a value in MSP. As far as we can tell, we have maybe like a handful, but they are willing to pay for certain services on a monthly basis. So the transition is getting there, I think, and it's becoming easier to sign up newer customers on an MSP than it is to change old customers. Because I think with technology being involved in everything in a day-to-day or operational basis or just any type of business that uses technology, it just makes sense for them to go MSP from the beginning.
Okay, well, great. Let's talk a little bit about how business continuity and BDR fits into your offering. What were you doing before you kind of discovered Acronis and eFolder together?
Before, we were using backup software and building our own storage devices in our data center to house backups for clients. We were using Vembu to do backup for clients, and we saw, it became a little tedious with the with bandwidth and building out storage devices and managing all of the components necessary for backup. Instead of just being able to manage basically the backup aspect of it and the restore aspect of it for the client, doing all of the other stuff involved with it became more, a lot more tedious in maintaining hardware and storage and stuff like that. So when we went looking for new backup software, we decided to look for something that could give us a way to do a backup and also, if necessary, boot up a machine in case we had a complete disaster or hardware failure, etc. So that's one of the reasons we liked Acronis and eFolder solution for our clients.
Okay, and tell me a little bit about were you using a lot of Acronis software before you discovered eFolder, or did you discover them about the same time and it was the right bundled solution? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Right. We had seen Acronis from before, but at that moment in time, it wasn't a good solution for us. But when eFolder presented it, we saw eFolder, and with the way Acronis is, with the eFolder and the licensing cost, it just made sense for us to adopt it at the same time, eFolder and Acronis, as a bundled package.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the interesting things is that Acronis really radically improved Backup Advanced, their Acronis Backup Advanced product, their premium business grade solution in the past 2 years. And so I think the timing was really right when eFolder and Acronis did a deal together to say, hey, look, Acronis was, Acronis' point of view is, hey, we want more MSPs. That's where the market's going. And eFolder, you work with MSPs, and you can bundle the software with your cloud and deliver a turnkey offering. And so I think the timing was right. The software was right, and the bundle was right. Nitesh, can you talk a little bit about some of your client deployments? What do they look like? How big are they? What kind of problems are you solving for the clients?
Okay, so I'll tell you the last deployment we did, which is probably the biggest. We have an auto dealership that has about 8 different dealerships on the roof, which are separate sites, but they have a main data center location that has a VMware cluster. So one of the things we were tasked to do is find a way to have a disaster recovery site that we could switch over to in case something happened down here in Miami, a hurricane or a complete disaster where we had to recover everything in a new site. And at that time, we had already started testing Acronis and eFolder, and I presented the solution to the client, and they loved it for the cost that it was. So we went from running a custom storage devices that we ran backups with to moving to Acronis and we built the BDR ourselves, and also replicating or actually running backups to eFolder with their backup device so that we get dedupe on that side. And in case we get into a situation where we need to go live at make one of our machines live, we can just call eFolder and have a machine up and running in an instance. So it solved, one was having a disaster recovery site with not actually having a separate data center or managing any equipment or buying equipment or anything like that. So that was one major solution solved, especially on the cost side for the client, which was great. And then two, we got away from managing our own licenses and a company like Vembu who not necessarily, their support is not bad, but it's not as good as I would say eFolder has. So it solved some issues there where costs were able to be reduced, and we gave the client the redundancy that they needed.
Yeah, it's great. I think for the audience's benefit, just to maybe double click a little bit on the, what we do to provide that cloud-based DR and that ability to spin up those servers. It's basically an emergency or as-needed service called the eFolder Continuity Cloud. So, with each one of these three BDR solutions, all of the data either gets backed up or replicated to the eFolder cloud, gets stored there, and then if there is ever a major site-wide disaster like, hurricanes that strike all different places in Florida, if a location was completely wiped out, what Support 305 could do is simply open an urgent ticket with eFolder, and we would provision a compute node in our continuity cloud, which would allow them to take this auto dealership's infrastructure and completely virtualize and run it in the eFolder cloud. So just to give some additional background, and the beauty of it is there's no cost to Support 305, and all eFolder MSPs. There's no cost on a recurring basis for access to the continuity cloud. The service is there when and if you need it, and then you only pay for it if you need it. And it's, you have a choice of a small, medium, or large node continuity cloud node, and you only pay for it in the context of a disaster. So this is all about, in my opinion, this is really about bringing what was used to be a luxury of the enterprise, which was having a redundant DR site, down into the SMB market, and without putting a whole bunch of costs on the client's back, right? It's a way to go out and make that SLA and make that promise, but it's not overly financially burdensome because we're relying on eFolder's infrastructure. So Nitesh, how do you go about pricing and packaging your BDR offering? Nitesh? Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you. Farrell can hear you.
Okay, but maybe we lost Nitesh. Nitesh, are you still there? Nitesh, we can't hear you. But you guys can still hear me. This is Ted. Can somebody on the session give me a heads up?
Yeah, Ted, you're doing good. Everything is good on yours. Looks like Nitesh might have dropped off.
Okay. Well then, let's see. So let's, if you would, Ryan, if we could advance, and maybe Nitesh will dial back in, and we'll have him live for the Q&A. Let's go to Farrell. Are you there? And let's talk a little bit about your business in the state of Washington and what you're doing up there.
Okay, I am here. I founded the company in 2011. I bought the IT division of my previous employer back in 2011, and the IT division was about 15% of his company. Majority of our clients are MSP. We started getting into the MSP back in about 2007. And one of the things when I founded the company I really wanted to do was get more to standardization and getting the best product out there. As probably a lot of people out there, and what I've heard is multiple people trying different type of backup solutions. Like our first BDR that we tried, we were using was from Zenith, and we ran into a lot of problems with their support. We've used Doyens for offsite backup support. Offsite backups. We've tried Datto, and we had a hodgepodge also. Some people using Windows backup, other people using. I forgot the one. But anyways, so we started doing standardizing, and we actually were using ShadowProtect. When we found out that a lot of the companies that we were using, they were using ShadowProtect in the back end, like Datto and Doyens and Zenith, that we decided, hey, let's go start doing this. And most of our clients are on ShadowProtect, or were on ShadowProtect. And then, but one of the problems is doing the full business continuity. We weren't having everybody going all the way with the BDR solution and then also going to the cloud. So we were really trying to push that, and that, part my fault for, having our engineers kind of doing the easiest solution for the client, because the client says, oh, hey, can we just go to a NAS device? Oh, yeah, you can. And so it kind of ended there. And so that's when we started doing the education of the clients, about recovery time objectives and recovery point objectives. And then we started getting buy-in on for the BDRs. With eFolder, we're just signing up to go with the ShadowProtect when we started looking at Replibit. And we were really impressed with that solution. And one of the number one things is we like to build or buy our own BDRs. And with Replibit, you don't need to have like a Windows server or Windows software installed. They come with their ISO. So we are starting implementing that now and are really impressed with what we've seen. And of course, with eFolder, with their pricing, it makes it really easy to standardize throughout even our smallest small customers. If they have a server, there's no reason now why they can't have a BDR and have a backed up into the cloud.
Right, and just so it's clear for everybody who's on the line with us today. I mean, I think correct me if I'm wrong, Carol, but one of the things you were describing is that, when you were using a lot of ShadowProtect, one of the unique capabilities of ShadowProtect is you can just use a standard NAS device as a local storage target, and then you can back up, or a direct attached USB drive as the storage target, and then you can back up that data off-site in the case of a worst-case disaster. But what you don't have is you don't have the benefits of fast on-site recovery if that production server fails. You can't virtualize on-site. So, for cost-conscious clients, that's an advantage if they're really cheap clients, right? And they can't afford that on-site appliance. But one of the cool things about Replibit is you can take the Replibit appliance software and drop it on any kind of server, and you don't have the extra Windows operating system costs. So you can kind of repurpose a lot of hardware or use kind of very cost-effective servers to give the client the benefit of on-site recovery.
Yeah, and we use Dell, and so I thought, okay, let me build up, get a BDR device built up from Dell. And, our cost was, less than $900, sell to the client for $1,500, or we wrap it into our managed services. And, and there we have, 2 terabyte drives, 16 gigs of RAM, and i7 there. And so the pricing, even for small businesses, it's the cost of another workstation.
Right.
Low-end server.
And how do you price and package that kind of offering on a monthly basis?
Well, with our managed services, we include it, and then that was one of the things that was really bad on my part is if we had one of our clients go down, we had the backups, but we didn't have the BDR to get them back up right away, so that would spend a lot of our time to get in there. So with our managed services clients, we include it with it, and, it comes to about, depending on the size, 300 to 600 a month per server that they have. And then we're just now starting to push this out to our non-managed service clients. What we're doing is basically basing it off of the number of terabytes of backup space.
Okay. And then what kind of clients are you typically putting these business continuity solutions into?
Engineering. We have a lot of engineering clients, legal. One of those ones that we're really starting to see a real hit is with our dental clients. Because anybody had dental clients, they're definitely very interesting. I mean, they have somewhere between, 8 and 14, 15 workstations, but with the way that digitalization of the dental offices, they need to be up all the time because that's how they make all their money, is from doing digital x-rays, doing all that stuff. So, so they're a really small office, but they really need high uptime. And so these things fit in there without any problems, even with the cheapest dentist.
Right, and I was actually at the dentist yesterday, and I was looking at all their infrastructure. And when they're running that kind of Dentrix type software application, there's a server somewhere in the back of the dentist's office that needs absolute 100% uptime for them to keep doing their job throughout the day, right?
Right, and unfortunately, most dentists don't invest enough into their infrastructure. So at least this gives them the continuity.
Right, but that spells huge opportunity. But I think it's a really good industry example of where you have a lot of things that are getting advanced. I mean, you have all medical records are becoming electronic. All of the X-rays are right there in the right there in the software application. I've even had one of the dental hygienists use voice recognition to talk to the computer to log information actually into the computer in real time while she's checking my teeth. So it's actually a pretty interesting example of where technology is impacting an industry and changing how the workflow is, but you can't have downtime in a scenario like that because the work just can't proceed.
And that's, again, another nice thing about eFolder being that they're HIPAA compliant as well.
That's right. So all the data that gets backed up through these various BDR product offerings is encrypted in transit and at rest in the eFolder cloud, and we have HIPAA compliancy end-to-end, and we sign business associate agreements with our MSP partners so that you can go out and sign BA agreements with your clientele. I guess before we kind of move on and go into some formal Q&A, are there any other software capabilities that your techs really fell in love with on Replibit in addition to the way the appliance itself works?
Yeah, one of the things that we liked about it is what is a little bit different is, so with Replibit, you configure the BDR, then you put the agent out on the server. We don't have to reboot the server after it's out there, and then it starts reporting right back to the the BDR, the vault right away. Another nice thing is there's no chains with Replibit like there is with ShadowProtect. And another thing is, so it takes up a whole lot less backup space. So if you're backing up a terabyte of space, with ShadowProtect, you need to have 50% or 100% extra to get all the chains in there. With Replibit, it's maybe up to 10% of what we've seen.
So very efficient, very efficient.
Yeah, very efficient. Oh, it's we're ConnectWise partners, and it's with ConnectWise right in there. When you set up, there's a click here now to set up your ConnectWise link. And so it was really, after getting it up, easy deployments, easy to get in the BDR, and so far from what we've seen from it, really impressed with it.
Okay, well, great, Farrell, perfect. Let's kind of move on here, and I just want to kind of make a couple concluding comments, and then we'll only have a couple minutes for Q&A. Let's see here. If somebody could, Ryan, if you could advance the slides to 26, that would be super. It seems like the UI is hiccuping on me. Okay.
All right, you should be up and ready, Ted.
Okay, great. Okay, so just a couple final comments, and then we'll open the floor to Q&A. So just the key theme here. I mean, this was great. In terms of getting real life use cases from 3 different eFolder partners. When you look at eFolder BDR as a service offering, there's commonalities between each flavor. You're using image-based backup. You're backing it up to the cloud. You have access to the eFolder Continuity Cloud for doing a cloud-based recovery. You're able to make the promises to your clients to be able to granularly restore any lost files but you're also able to restore whole systems on-site or in the cloud. The solutions are very flexible. You can source the licensing and the cloud service directly from eFolder. You can build your own BDR appliances. You can really serve almost virtually any kind of client, big or small. And then what everything that eFolder does is really channel ready because we're focused on the MSP market. We understand your business model. That's, we grew out of an MSP ourselves as a company. But then I think as you heard today, there's additional nuanced features that differ between each one of these software flavors. And what's beautiful about the way we serve our partners is we let you make the decision on which flavor of software is going to suit you best. And you heard about some of those unique capabilities today. And we'll be sending around copies of these slides so you have this, all the gory detail here. But just at the end of the day, the promise of business continuity is the ability to go out there and drive 50 to 72, 75% recurring gross margins from these services. That's really the business opportunity you heard from each one of these partners today. You solve a huge need for clients. You're able to charge a premium for it. You're able to bake it into your overall managed service offering and charge a premium. And one of the reasons you're able to do that is because what eFolder does is we kind of take the complexity out of the equation. We take the software plus the cloud, we combine it, we add a massive amount of cloud storage on these different product lines, and we price it at a very competitive wholesale monthly rate per protected server, which allows you to have really predictable wholesale costs for all of the technology you need to make it work. And then you're able to go around and really charge a premium to your clients. So with that, Ryan, let's try to take just a handful of questions from the floor, and see how we can do with the last couple of minutes we have.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do that. One of the requests that we had, and if you don't mind, I'll go back and do this, was if we could put the comparison chart back on screen while we're doing the Q&A so that people can look at the compare and contrast there. To go back to one of the early questions that we got in, John, you made a point during your conversation about the predictability of cost per customers included in a BDR service versus if we have to do an emergency, come back on site and re-up the server, that might cost $4,000 to $6,000. That was very interesting to a lot of people. What were you including in that particular cost? In the 4 to 6, is that primarily your time, or are there other charges involved in that?
I only include 2 charges in that, and that's our time and then emergency shipment fees of hardware and software licensing that has to be repurchased. What we found out when we often did recoveries of people's software is that they don't have their license keys anymore, and so we had to restore Windows servers, and, well, you don't have a license key, we got to go buy you a new one, and I hate to say it, but that's the way life is. And so those are really the 2 things. But the $4,000 to $6,000 is actually a real number that we gave to a customer not recently, but 4 or 5 years ago, that we actually had to build them. It was actually $5,800 or $5,800 on a restore of just 2 servers because of the amount of time that we spent out there having to reinstall software using a traditional type of backup system. I'm not going to mention the backup software, but they had a full backup. It was a good, valid backup, but to restore it, it took that long to reinstall the operating system, move back over the files, reconfigure everything back, get everything back in place, and then get it restarted for the customer. It was a very long process, required 2 technicians to get those 2 servers back up and going.
Excellent. Thank you for the breakdown. And I'll tell you, I think that might be one of the most important things that Ted pointed out at the beginning, that this is not a commodity service that you're just doing for, let's do it for a few bucks. But obviously, when there's urgency involved, you can charge those kinds of fees for that service if it's not under a contract.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you very much. A question that we have in terms of the Replibit offering, somebody was asking, how does Replibit handle retention? How long will deleted files be available for restore? If we can kind of go back into the the Replibit conversation that we were just having towards the end, can you address for us just retention for replication?
my understanding is and what we've seen is that he go back as long as you have Replibit in there, you go back to the files.
Yeah, I mean, every single one of these solutions supports age-based retention policies, so you can configure, how much and how far back your recovery points you want to have. The longer you go back, the more recovery points, the more granular, the more data storage you're always going to utilize. But there are some unique capabilities in Acronis and Replibit where you can have different local versus remote or off-site or cloud retention policies, which is pretty killer, because you often want, in most cases, you want more extensive on-site archives, and you'll try to trim those or reduce those or manage those in the cloud, because that storage will always be a little bit more expensive than local storage. So hopefully that answers both parts of the question, I think.
Yeah, I think that does. And I mean, again, probably the most common question that we've seen coming in from the audience is, okay, boil it down for us, which of the three is the very best? And I think to your point, the answer is it depends on who are you and what do you already have up and running, and then B, who are your customers and what kind of environment are they operating in, what are their levels of sensitivity, and what kind of configuration do they already have in place. So I think that kind of speaks to the overall issue. And we're coming up on the end of the time. Ted, let me just ask you one more question. If you could just kind of talk about the startup process, right? So if somebody listening in right now says, okay, I find in one of these three environments this is interesting, how would they get a hold of the playbook that you discussed earlier, the calculator for the cost of downtime? What is their onboarding process to start actually taking advantage of the eFolder solutions?
So thank you, Ryan. So everybody who attended today's session will receive a copy of the Business Continuity Playbook. I encourage you to look at that. I think where it will come in handy is it's an end-to-end set of tools to promote and educate clients around business continuity. It's not really to sell them something. It's educating them around why business continuity. And then if you're not yet doing business with eFolder, I think as you saw today, there's a lot of moving parts to making a decision, and you need an expert, you need a guide, you need a Sherpa to kind of help you make that decision, and that's what our product specialists do. So, I really would encourage you, if you're trying to figure out how to standardize what you're doing today, how to make business continuity something you offer to every client, then I'd highly recommend spending some time with an eFolder product specialist to learn more about each of these solutions so that you can make the right decision for your business.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, there are definitely additional questions that have come in here. So we, just for the sake of everybody who's listening in right now, we are capturing all of the questions that are coming in. And if we didn't have a chance to get to it during today's live session, we will actually make sure that Ted's team, those product specialists, have access to that, and they can kind of reach back out to you with some additional information. Again, I think that this is the important part of today's conversation is it depends, right? The correct answer when it comes to the right solution for your environment and for your customers really does depend on who you're working with and what is the environment that you're taking care of. So we really appreciate that kind of real-world input, and we're happy to continue that conversation as we keep going in the ongoing part of the support and interactive process. We're out of time in today's conversation, so let me just kind of wrap up by saying, Nitesh and John and Farrell, thank you guys very much for your time today and for the insights into your decision-making process. Hopefully a lot of the people listening in today can actually see some very familiar configuration in your situation and some of the decision points that you're currently facing. Those things should help you come to some decisions and really get going as you get started with your BDR solutions and customers. At the end here, let me just kind of point forward. There are obviously additional sessions like this in the Channel Expert Hour that are scheduled and upcoming. Our next one is actually scheduled for the 16th of July. And if you are interested in that session or in the full schedule of upcoming sessions, please just follow the link there that we provided on the bar guide. You can see what it looks like for future opportunities. Thank you again, everybody, for your time today, for joining in on the live conversation, and for the lively participation in the question and answer. We will be following up with you guys more in the future. But for now, everybody, have a great day and successful selling. Thank you very much.